Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cougar Dash. I am your host, Ryan Root, and we are finally rejoined by Cody Schoeler from his last week bye, but we are still on track with our season here on Cougar Dash. But how was your bye week, Cody? Had a good time, right?
Yeah, it was good. Sometimes get a little bit of time off, especially after dealing with some WSU heartbreak recently. But we're all good now.
That is true. We had some heartbreak for the men's basketball team with that tournament, but as of late, this past Sunday, WSU unfortunately fell to South Florida, 57-53 in the first round of the NCAA tournament. We got to at least talk about it a little bit. I mean, what do you think sort of went wrong for women's basketball towards the end of this game?
Yeah, sometimes I think a team just gets to where they are and kind of reaches their ceiling. If you just look at the way, first off, I didn't look much into it, but they kind of, South Florida was the AAC champions. Like, this was a team that was pretty good. And I don't know the nitty gritty of the women's, seeding and stuff, but, with having that matchup and then having to play a one seed in the next round anyway, WSU's chances to really do something crazy were not that high to begin with. And, for the first time making it in 30 years or something, like, that's, big enough in and of itself. So, the fact that they were just there, they showed they could compete. They hung in there. They nearly pulled off. I guess it wouldn't have been an upset, but a little they were 9, a little come from behind victory. And, they played well. Their shooting wasn't necessarily there. Charlize struggled from the field, but was able to get points from the free throw line. Crystal, struggled a bit too. So, it's a young team that's playing this first, tournament action. But the fact that they hung in there, the fact that, they didn't get blown out, there's been a lot of blowouts. The fact that they showed, that they're there to stay. So I think, this was about putting something forward to get back there next year. And I think they're definitely on track for that.
Yeah, I know one of the things I previewed before the game took place this past Sunday was South Florida was a very good rebounding team before coming into this game. They were among the best in the nation. And they had only lost, I believe, 2 games throughout their entire season. And one of those teams that they had lost 4 games. I want to believe one of the teams they lost to was like Baylor or something like that. So this team was not to be messed around with. They definitely won their conference. Yeah, I got it pulled up here. They lost to Baylor and lost to Houston, UCF, and they lost to NC State just this past Tuesday.
Yeah.
But all those teams they lost to, including this past Tuesday, were all tournament teams. So this team definitely knew how to beat and know how to compete against the best of the best in women's basketball. And to be fair, so did kind of WSU for that regard. With Stanford and with I know UCLA's team is very good as well. I believe they're in the tournament. Arizona. Yeah. The Pac-12 women's basketball is SEC football pretty much. I don't know if I would go to that degree, but for the sake of this analogy, we'll use it. But WSU, they had a very favorable matchup, or not a very favorable matchup, but about the best matchup you could really expect to have for your first NCAA appearance in 30 years. It was a very, very level game before tip-off. Unfortunately, they just kind of fell apart in the last couple of seconds there. They had a lead with a little bit over a minute and then kind of gave it up to USF towards the end of that game. But in terms of a season in review, A+, right? The fact that they even got to the NCAA tournament, even the fact that they won a Pac-12 tournament game, I can assure you, and Cody can probably back me up on this, no one here at WSU following WSU athletics was thinking that the former 11th or 12th overall team in the conference last year, right?
Yeah.
They had, I want to say, like 11 wins or something like that. The 11th or 12th overall team in the conference last year to going to the first round of the NCAA tournament for the first time in 30 years with the same head coach, and they lost their 2 best players, and they were going to be led by a freshman phenom in Charlize. No one was expecting that. So it doesn't matter if this was a 57-53 result. It doesn't matter if it was a 57-0 result. A+ on the season. That's kind of. I kind of want to see what your thoughts are on not only with like the women's basketball tournament, but also with men's basketball tournament is unless you are one of those top seeded teams, like for this sake for women's basketball, unless you're NC State or Stanford, you're expecting a national title picture at least. But in terms of these mid-seeded teams, I mean, do you think they should just, for lack of a better way to put it, do you think they should kind of just be grateful that they're there in the first place, and having such a great season like WSU did?
I mean, that's what it's all about. You get to the dance. I mean, you've got a shot. It's, a 64-team tournament, single elimination. Anybody, mathematically and technically could win. And so, especially for a WSU team, I don't know what their goals were at the start of the season. I doubt it was to win a national championship. I doubt it was to even win a Pac-12 championship. But, I mean, like you mentioned, this was a team that finished bottom of the Pac-12 last year, lost its two best players, not only on the team, but in program history, including their leading scorer, and was picked last to be picked last in the Pac-12 media poll, just like Oregon State over on the men's side. I thought this was going to be a terrible year. I mean, when a bad team loses its two best players, but little did we know we had another all-time program great. I would assume Charlize Ledger-Walker coming in.
She seems to be on track to doing so.
Yeah, I mean, led the conference in scoring, I believe, or at least was leading towards the end of the year. And so
she was the first team All-American freshman selection, right? Yeah.
I believe so. But I mean, I think she led I don't know if the tournament messed it up, but I think she was the leading scorer in the conference, which is insane given that you have that you have. But I mean, yeah, if you would have told them at the start of the year, hey, you're going to get into the tournament without, having to, win the Pac-12 tournament and get an automatic bid, if you're going to get in just based on your season alone, I think that's a huge success. And, it gives them something to build on. Obviously, with the year that we're having, nobody has to leave. I know Crystal is a senior, so I guess she is able to return. So this is a team that could run it back, get some more recruits that, can see. I mean, we've seen what Kyle Smith has done. It's possible to recruit here to Pullman, so there's no reason to believe that Cami Etheridge could do that off the backs of a, tournament appearance, and the fact that, for them, it's come play in the best women's basketball conference in the country. So, I mean, this is huge, and to do it in, what was this, her second or third year? I think third.
For Cami, something like that, yeah.
I think it's her third. I think she was here a year before, maybe. But this early on to turn this team around, I mean, it's cool. And so, yes, it's disappointing the way that they lost. It was in their grasp, but I mean, there's no way you can look on this season and be, disappointed in it overall.
Yeah, this is very reminiscent to Wazoo soccer last year, right? I mean, making it to the College Cup, to the Final Four, also with Stanford, those freaking Cardinals, the Cardinal, sorry. Always want to contend everyone in women's athletics, that's for sure. I mean, volleyball included. But this is very reminiscent with the soccer team last year in terms of, I don't think anyone was predicting they were. I think everyone knew that they were a good team. Same thing with like WC volleyball. They knew they were a good team, but in terms of how far they got in the tournament, no one was really predicting that. I mean, what they took out, Virginia, I think was a top seed, or I think I think they took out like a top and a second seed as well. And that recruiting turned out to give them the number one recruit in the nation at the time, Trinity Rodman, who since has declared for the NWSL. So I can see a very similar thing happening with women's basketball. I mean, no one was this is even like an even bigger situation. I mean, no one was expecting that they were going to win a conference tournament game, let alone make it to the first round of the NCAA tournament. So now that you have Charlize that was leading the charge, much like, Morgan Weaver was leading for soccer, I mean, nothing says you guys don't have some weight behind you with recruiting. I mean, you guys can actually start hitting up those 4 stars, those 5-star recruits, maybe. I mean, I won't put my money on 5-star yet, but at least in terms of 4-star recruits, you can build up on that. And like I said, A+ for a season. It's great to see both women's and men's basketball have some flourishing seasons this year, as opposed to last year was kind of more men's and not women's. But
I want to add one thing. We've obviously, Charlize deserves all the credit she's getting. She was incredible. But, this wasn't a one-woman team. I mean, this was a legit team, because they had people that could pick up the slack. Bella Arquitete was great as kind of that post player. Ula Matuga. I mean, is just a glue, a glue player. She scores when she needs to. She passes, and then you want to Tedder, I think is her name. But she's a shooter.
Yeah.
I mean, this for as much as they do have a star leading the way. This is not some of these teams you'll see where one person's just doing it all. I mean, this is a legitimate team, and I think that's what makes it so impressive going forward. Is that even if they lose a piece or two, I mean, I think Cami Etheridge is building a legit program.
Yeah, Murakete had her hands full against USF and their rebounding squad, but I think she pulled down like 8 boards or something like that. Which they went down with a valiant effort. They went down swinging. Just take another crack at it next year. And honestly, I mean, if they keep going the same way that they're going, I mean, see if they could be a Final Four team in the conference tournament. I did say in the conference tournament. I'm not saying Final Four in the NCAA tournament, but no, all is well for women's basketball. But we can actually talk a little bit about some football now. Now that basketball is actually kind of wrapped up here, for a topic that I know was a little bit delayed with kind of the newsworthiness of it, but. A couple weeks ago, WSU signs a 10-year endorsement deal with Gesa Banking out of Tri-Cities, which happens to be where I'm from. Shout out to Tri-Cities. But 10-year endorsement deal with Gesa Banking to rename Martin Stadium Gesa Field at Martin Stadium, much like a Sports Authority Field at Mile High over in Denver. But Gesa Field, Cody. I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I believe Pat Chun said. I don't think he was entirely certain, but I believe he thought that it was like the biggest one-time commitment of money to WSU athletics in history. So that in itself is, just an insane thing that they'd be able to do, especially, given the circumstances of everything. And, I think, naming just stadium, field, whatever names are a bit overrated. Everybody freaks out when a field or a stadium gets their name changed, and then 2 years later, nobody cares. I mean, over on the west side, people freaked out when it became CenturyLink, and people freaked out when it became T-Mobile. Oh my God, Safeco, but it's an insurance company, So, I mean, I'm not going to say, oh yeah, I'm going to the game at Gesa Field and Martin Stadium. It's still Martin Stadium to me. It'll be there, but I mean, I think this is big. I mean, obviously, anything that can help out the athletics is big. I mean, what's 1.1 million a year or whatever when they're already so much in debt? I don't know, but this could be the start of something because colleges don't have a lot of these naming rights. A lot of college stadiums are named after alumni or whoever helped pay for it or whatever. I know that's how it is with Martin Stadium. So this is big, and this is a big step. And who's to say there can't be more of this? You said a president once, maybe we'll see Bowler. I know they have the court at Bowler with the name as well, but or not at Bowler, but at Beasley. But who knows where this goes? But I think this is big, and it shows that Pat Chun. I mean, he's done so much since he's got here, and I was hoping for something a little funnier, a little something more of a meme than Gesa Field. Gesa Field sounds a little weird, and I've never heard of Gesa before, but I think if people are freaking out, just it'll pass. You don't have to say Gesa Field if you don't want to. It might be there, but there's more to it than that. But I think this just shows everything that Pat Chun has been able to do since he's got here, and he hasn't really slowed down one bit with all the stuff he's done and the way that the teams have been turning around. So I trust the guy what he's doing, and to get that money, I mean that's huge for this program.
I mean, that's what it really comes down to, right? It's money for a program that is among the worst out of all Power 5 schools, not even the Pac-12. I mean, the WSU is constantly losing money, regardless of putting a ton of resources into athletics. I mean, that's really what it comes down to is kind of getting money for the program. That's the biggest pro I can see from this. In terms of the naming of it, like you said, this is very rare for college arenas / stadiums to be named after a brand. I mean, a couple come off the top of my head. I know those folks over on the west side call it Alaska Airlines Field or an arena, I believe.
Yeah.
And those folks over in Boise have Albertson Stadium. I want to say they're sprinkled around the country, but I mean, 95% of stadiums and arenas are named after an alumni or a figure of sorts. I mean, we have Beasley Coliseum. It's Friel Court at Beasley Coliseum. Friel is Jack Friel, who I believe was the first head coach of WSU basketball. So that's my kind of biggest thing is college stadiums are, traditionally named and based off of. I mean, it's Martin Stadium, right? Or it's what do they call that big that Michigan stadium? Was that big, like 90,000?
I don't remember. One of them's the Big House, but I have no idea. That might be Ohio State.
Yeah, like I want to say that Michigan Stadium, it seats over 100,000 people, doesn't it? It's massive, right? But like historic stadiums like that, they're named after these notable figures and whatnot. So it's got a bad taste in my mouth right now, kind of like what you were saying. 2 years down the road, maybe I could be calling it Gesa Field or Gesa Field or Martin Stadium. 100% of the time, Martin Stadium, I think, will be implemented in my my notation of it. But it's the same thing, like what you said with the Seahawks. Like it started at Quest Field, or heck, it started as the Kingdome, got bulldozed, then became the Quest Field.
Yep.
Yeah, and when it got renamed CenturyLink, I mean, I know my dad, who's been a Seahawks fan, said, that's Quest Field to me. That's not CenturyLink Field. 2-3 years time, we're all calling it the Clink for sure.
Well, now it's renamed something else that I can't even remember.
Yeah, it's Lumen Field, which I, for one, absolutely hate. I will always call it the Clink. I am making an executive decision. I will always call it the Clink. Lumen Field, unless it gets renamed to something cooler, I'm not calling it Lumen Field.
2 years, it'll be something else. But my thing just comes down to I don't know how this goes down, whether they look for it, but Gesa comes to him and says, "Hey, we'll give you $11 million over 10 years to call your field something." That's nothing. That's literally it costs WSU nothing except to maybe field chalk, or whatever, field paint.
They're doing some cross promotional deal with Gesa Bank. Like if you get a special Cougar card or something and you go to the games with that card, you get other stuff. That's involved with it. I know that.
But at the end of the day, these naming rights are just this thing that was created to get more money. There's nothing really to it. I mean, they're not selling anything. This costs WSU, like I said, literally nothing. And it's essentially, I don't want to say free money, but it's essentially free money. I mean, so.
Yeah, WSU got a scholarship of sorts, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have to do anything. The field was called nothing. Who cares? And especially this year with the way just finances were and everything. I mean, WSU got one home game. Fans weren't there to begin with. But so I don't know how much they lost from this. I know they were going to say it was quite a lot, but this has got to, maybe in a normal year they don't do this, but maybe they were, strapped a little bit for some cash and this helps and stuff.
Yeah. Let me ask you this real quick. So with UW being named Alaska Airlines Stadium and their arena, I don't know the details of their contract. The thing that kind of throws me off about this deal is 10 years. I don't know what WSU's football program is going to be like in 10 years. I don't know if it's going to be right where they left off, if they're going to be the worst team in the country, or if they're going to be a national title contender. I can only keep my fingers crossed for the latter. But 10 years seems, 10 years with 1.1 million a year. I mean, if this was like you said, I think they were very desperate to get some revenue in after this past year. If this was a 5-year, $6 million deal, with the same, or a 5-year, $5.5 million deal, whatever it would be, then I could take this in a little bit better because hell, in 5 years, what are they going to even be like? I mean, is this going to be a front runner for a Pac-12 title? Is this going to be right where they are left off? Because at the end of those 5 years, Gesa could turn into an Alaskan Airlines, or it could turn into I don't want to say Starbucks, but a bigger brand of sorts. So it's money for right now, for sure. 10 years, kind of like Scottie Pippen on those 90s Bulls. He signed a 7-8 year contract, getting paid nickels and dimes behind Michael Jordan. It's 10 years is a long time. So we'll see kind of how it turns out. But this is common with professional sports, obviously, getting their stadiums and arenas renamed. It seems like every 4 or 5 years, with very seldom professional stadiums actually having it named after the owner. I know the Buffalo Bills stadium used to be named Ralph Wilson, who was the former owner of the Bills. Now I believe it's New Era Field, I want to say. But happens often in pro sports, not that often in college sports. So it was a little startling to see Gesa Field. But like you said, hats off to Pat Chun for continuing to make just progress at this point. Losing money, sure, it's not the direction they want to go in by any means, but he's just making progress in every other regard. I mean, just hats off to him. But it's going to take some getting used to. That's for sure. But we can talk a little bit more about some football centric stuff. So around the time when they will be playing in Gesa Field, we got to talk a little bit about WCU's recruiting. And this one's very open-ended, but we can kind of go in whatever direction you'd like to go in. But I guess we could talk a little bit about, I kind of did some brief research yesterday and saw some, according to 24/7 Sports, there's 6 enrollees while there's 14 who have signed letters of intent. I got a little distracted when I saw one of the enrollees, who is CJ Moore, who is a wide receiver. I saw it ranks like them nationally, positionally, and by their state. I saw number 1 for position. I'm like, there is no way we got the number 1 receiver in the country. He's a JUCO transfer. Yeah. So we got the number 1 receiver from JUCO. So take that however you like it. But Xavier Ward, who's a dual threat quarterback, Sam Carell, who's a defensive end, inside linebacker Ryan Kershaw, wide receiver Dejon Stribling, and punter Nick Harbour from Australia. In terms of the progress they've made with the recruits, I know it's very general, but what are some of your initial thoughts on the people who have, at the very least, signed that letter of intent? The 20 people that are on this list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is Nick Rolovich's first full class that he got to recruit of. So I think it's going to be very telling what we see from this. And, obviously, anytime there's a new coach, takes, give him a few years to kind of get recruit his guys in. I know there's been some transfer portal stuff, Guarantano from Tennessee, a quarterback from Michigan State, and then a guy from Hawaii who's going to walk on, who's from Washington originally. But, I think the biggest thing, I don't have, the class in front of me and the numbers in front of me, but from looking at it, months earlier, what I did realize is that there seems to be a lot more in-state guys. They're still not getting the biggest, 5 stars from in-state, but, they're sticking to their 3 stars and doing what they do, but looking much more in-state. I believe it may not be the defensive lineman that you mentioned, but they do have a defensive end from here, and a linebacker, I believe, from the center, LaSalle or something. So I think that's a big thing, because that was something that Leach was always criticized on. It's just never recruiting in state. He seemed to be doing all his recruiting back where, he had probably created pipelines, Florida and Texas. He kind of all over the place, but rarely getting, anybody right under his nose. So I think that could be a big thing, because there is a lot of talent here in Washington. So if we can kind of create, obviously, we're not going to compete with, the guys that are getting national interest, most likely, at least not right now. But if we can kind of start to scoop up some in-state, 3 stars and some guys, I think that would be huge. And so that's one of my big things. And then I know they went pretty hard after the wide receiver position, and I believe
it looks like
line,
it, yeah.
And defensive line, I think.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, which, you're always going to, but I think wide receiver is big because, some guys leave. I know Jameer Calvin entered the portal, and guys are not leaving this year, but going to leave, and that's going to be a huge position for Rolovich in this offense. So, I like the idea of just loading up on talent at a position like that, and a position like D-line where you can rotate, but, some guys are going to emerge. So I think right now he just got to keep getting as many guys as he can that are going to fill that out, and then figure out, who are the guys going forward, because there's still a lot of uncertainty. And then a punter from Australia, I'll take that any day. I mean,
Right.
dude will be a baller. I'm a big Mike Dixon fan for the Seahawks, so give me a punter from Australia every day. As long as we never have to go back to the days of our wide receiver doing rugby punts, then
how sweet, man.
So yeah, get that punter. But yeah, I think we're really going to see what kind of recruiting trends Nick Rolovich establishes, and then going forward.
Back to what you were saying about the receivers, there's about like 4 or 5 on here out of the 20 that are listed. So a fifth or a quarter of the recruits are receiver. Kind of need to stock up, like you're saying, with the people transferring out and the veterans that are already on the team. I noticed there is some love at quarterback here, not only with Garantano, but also with if I can pull up his name here, Xavier Ward.
You gotta get a quarterback. You gotta get a quarterback in each class. So that's smart.
Yeah. So, I mean, quarterback. That situation is going to be a whole other ball game when that comes, because I mean, not only with those two coming in, Gunnar Cruz leaves. Didn't Kamen put himself in the portal, or is he still here? Or
I think he's still here, but
okay.
I can't remember.
I can't say like for sure that he's going to stay here and that he won't go in the portal, because Lord knows a 4-star recruit quarterback who hasn't. Who's barely touched the field after 3 years, 4 years. I'm not putting my money on him staying, so to speak. So in terms of right now, I see the competition being between Garantano. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Garantano,
Ward, and Delora. Delora is obviously off to a very rocky off season. He'll be. I assume he'll be back with the team in time for spring ball, and
I assume he already is. Honestly, I know they're starting up soon. Yeah.
That's obviously a big issue that's honest. I think that's just a little too early to even to break down at this point, because although we said that Delora had that Rolovich influence to back him up between him, Gunnar, and Kamen. But now he's up against 2 other dudes who have that Rolovich influence. He went to go get those 2 guys too. So that doesn't really help him out anymore. He's got a year under his belt, however people want to grade it. But true freshman quarterback has a year under his belt. Very early to tell. I will say, in terms of my thoughts of who they should be looking at, I know that's when we talked about it a few months back, that Jaden Hicks, the safety out of Nevada, he and whatever secondary corner, whatever that this team can figure out ASAP is it's going to work wonders down the road, because considering how this secondary was this past year, even when they also lost Skylar Thomas, I mean, you got to start developing those roots as early as you can. The defensive line also, like you said, needs to pretty much all a defense, except for Jahad Woods is going to have to orchestrate that whole deal again. But I mean, credit to Jahad Woods for staying another year. But the offense, I ought to think, would figure itself out when you have not only Borghi back there, but I don't think the offense will struggle too much, so to speak, this next year. I think they'll be relatively okay. I'm still expecting a rebuilding year, but yeah. I'm still expecting a rebuilding year, but a year under the new offense, you got most of the people back. I don't think Abe Lucas declared, so you still got your best lineman there.
Everybody, but they're returning everybody. I mean, Jameer Calvin's leaving and Josh Watson, their guard, but I think everybody else is returning.
Right. So you got 2 players on that offense that could be drafted in the NFL the next season with Lucas and Borghi. Offense, I think, will kind of iron some of the wrinkles out. Defense, I think, is the biggest thing that in this offseason. I mean, Jason Dickert from Wyoming came by this past year as our new defensive coordinator, and I obviously did not have a great start. He's going against USC and Oregon out there, sure, but that's got to be the thing to take the Cougs to the next level. As of right now, Hey, maybe we'll play the women's basketball expectation game. We'll say, we're expecting this team to not do anything, right? We're not expecting anything to happen with this team at all. But
Yeah.
maybe one of these quarterbacks can come in and be the new Patrick Mahomes for us. But that is unfortunately all the time that we have for today. But it's good to actually have some football to talk about now. I kind of missed it a little bit, not gonna lie. But I'm kind of just missing the NFL as a whole, to be honest with you. I'm kind of going through some football withdrawal. But that's all the time that we have for today. You can find our written content exclusively on sportspac12.com, and you can follow them on Twitter at sportspac12. You can find links to that written content on our website, dashsports.tv, and make sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at dashsportstv. Lastly, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, Dash Sports, where you can find all of our shows and clips. You can tune in at the same time next week, 1 o'clock on Thursdays. Unfortunately, I can't plug any more basketball games or anything like that. Keep up with WSU soccer. Keep up with WSU volleyball, baseball. We've still got some stuff going on. But as always, you can catch us at 1 p.m. on Thursdays. Go Cougs.